Welcome everyone. I see people are still joining the session. So I'll just give you a bit of background on the session. So it's hacking organizational design. Oftentimes we go to self-organizing teams. We do other changes to our organizational structure. We'll talk about some of those. And we hope that these changes in structures will help us move to this new way of working, help us move to creating the success that we want for organizational systems and so on. All right, so we're going on a journey, and I'm going to share some information I've actually never shared, even in some of my advanced trainings, of how to foster organizational design. This is some very key patterns that I've generated, figured out, adapted from a lot of different sources to create a successful shift towards a healthy functioning organization. Of course, organizational design is a key part of that, of course. So let's get going now. Let's get started. I see we're up to 27 people, so let's get going. So what is this part? Hacking organizational design. So how organizational design, we can't just change it, right? If we could just change it, this would be a very simple, very short talk. Just go do this one thing. But it actually requires what we call hacking, right? We actually need to understand what's there, change it, adapt it, right? So when you hack something, something already exists that you're modifying to evolve to a different state of functioning. And that's what this is all about, is how do we actually create high performance through our organizational design? All right, so let's continue on our journey. So first of all, I want to give you some background. So Shift 314, this is our organization. Now you're probably wondering, what is this 314? Well, you've probably heard of 3.14 before, the very famous number, it's pi. And really the core of our company is about applying universal principles to support evolutionary capabilities. So whether it's your evolutionary capability as an individual or leader, or the organization's evolutionary capabilities. Because ultimately adaptability or being agile comes from our ability to change and evolve. Now, my background is I actually started in artificial intelligence research, and I've got published papers. I spoke at conferences about how do we get complex autonomous robots to work together in different environments, right? And that's what we're figuring out today, is how do we get ourselves as people, as complex agents, working together in these complex work environments. So that's the key part of what this journey is all about. So I got involved with IT. I stopped working as an academic, started working as a software developer. And very early on, I got involved with Agile. So I've got a very good idea of what it's like to do projects without Agile, with Agile in a variety of roles: software developer, architect, project lead. I've held management roles, vice president of engineering, director of software development. So I know what it's like to get Agile working from in the trenches as well as from a management role. And I've spent the last more than 10 years now working as a trainer and a consultant, helping organizations succeed with Agile. So that's kind of my journey. And where that's taken me, and you'll see some of this in this talk here, is this understanding that culture and leadership actually play a pivotal role in the foundation for the success that we hope to create. So of course we want to do some very tactical things, some things that give us very tangible results, but that all sits on this deeper foundation. And you're going to get a flavor of that today when we talk about organizational design. So let's start with the basics. What is organizational design? What are we up against here? So organizational design, when we look at it, is how do we structure our organization, right? What's going on with people? Where are the people? How are they grouped right now? What kind of grouping will actually serve us better? How are people connected? Where are the touch points between different people doing different parts of work? And most importantly is, how do we create value? Is the way we're working now creating value in an extraordinarily good way? Or are there different structures, different designs that will support the creation of values? That's really what organizational design at its core is all about, is how are we as human beings working together to create value? So what actually is high performance? We're going to take a moment on this because it's a very, very important question, because usually we want to change our organizational design to create higher levels of performance. So it's really great to have some sort of lexicon or discussion of, well, what's lower performance and what's higher performance? So let's take a look at this. All right, so I'm a scientist, so I like these dependent variable graphs to make sense of everything. So essentially, the way things work with human beings is, as we evolve people, as people grow and evolve to become more evolved, more capable individuals and leaders, and we adapt new ways of working, such as agile, digital, and so on, what we see is the engagements and outcomes will change. So if we look at different culture system, and every infographic in the show here is a different culture system, we're moving from a red culture where it's all about power, authority, roles. That's what dominates the conversation. Now, as human beings, as we've evolved to more capable ways of working, we've moved towards it being about achievement. The modern multinational organization, the modern business, you can think about that as orange, right? We start to have some innovation and so on. Now, as we move forward, really high performance cultures actually come from creating a people-centric culture. We say Agile is about people, but they're cultures where people come first, and it's all about the purpose, the values, and really sharing power and turning the hierarchy upside down. Now, the next step is this thing called Teal, which is where everyone fully acts like an adult and takes full responsibility for their behavior. Then you can have really what's considered for most of us, very radical structures, like things like self-management or self-organization, distributed control, and so on. So when we look at this kind of journey of human beings evolving into more and more capable ways of functioning together, what we see is that there's a dividing line between business as usual, and on the other side of the line, we embrace complexity. Right? There's a leaning into this complex systems, and we support people in a way that they can lean into the complexity of what's happening around them. Now, what happens through that is we create what's called business agility. This is where business agility lives. Now, if you're into an Agile, the usual goal is actually business agility, to have a very nimble, adaptable, responsive, evolutionary organization. But that actually comes from having a more evolved culture. Right? So most of the goal of really Agile is trying to take the culture over here to really evolve people and to evolve new ways of working. All right, so that's high performance in a nutshell. High performance lives over here on the green and teal side of the equation. All right, so now let's go through all the traps. We're going to go through a couple of the traps with looking at organizational design. Here's trap number one, cut and paste. Now, a lot of you have probably seen this. If you do, don't go mad at people. If you're doing Agile as usual, you're probably falling into cut and paste. So what is cut and paste? Cut and paste says, hey, somebody else has the solution. We can just cut and paste it here. Now, we have this little kid's drawing of cut and paste because that's what the level of maturity of cut and paste is. It's a very low maturity way of approaching such a complex topic as organizational change, organizational evolution. It's certainly a very immature approach to organizational design. But a lot of you may have already experienced this and have experienced firsthand how this doesn't work very well. For example, you may have encountered the SAFe model. There's nothing wrong with the model. It's just approaching it from a cut and paste mentality creates a lot of damage. A lot of you may be stuck in the Spotify model where you have a lot of squads and the names have changed, but nothing is really different. So there's another trap trying to copy the Spotify model. Actually, the secret here, you know why they called them squads, is that they wouldn't make the mistake of copying anyone else's solution. So they'd find their own path. So if you're trying to copy Spotify, please don't copy what they created. Please copy how they approached it. All right. Trap number two is the Agile lens. All right. So what is the Agile lens? So a lot of us have what I call the Agile blinders on. The Agile blinders where we only see things from a very singular perspective. And Scott Ambler was talking about this morning, where he says, well, if you just see things from one angle, you're going to be very limited. So we're asking you to take off any Agile blinders, especially for an Agile evangelist, and look at the broader picture, the broader spectrum of what's actually going on. And what does that mean? It means that we're understanding that when we have our Agile glasses on, we're actually creating a distorted view. So I'm not saying to get rid of Agile. I'm saying Agile is amazing. Agile is a fantastic approach. But when we use the Agile as the lens for looking at everything, now how do you know you're in an Agile lens? Well, if you're in an Agile transformation program, that's what's going on. You're in distortion right there because the goal is Agile transformation. And we'll talk a bit more about how Agile is not the goal later on. Now, trap number three is that culture follows structure. Some people say and teach this. There's a famous teaching that culture follows structure. That you have an old culture, and you have a new structure introduced, you have new behaviors, new habits stick, and voila, new culture. That's the theory. But in practice, here's the trap. The new structures how they're introduced, the mindset or consciousness with which they're introduced, usually what happens is not a people-centric approach. Now, yes, structures can be changed, and we'll talk a bit more about how to do that safely and effectively and how to actually make that work. So stay tuned for that. But this is the trap. So we want to tell you what the traps are. Now, before we go into the solutions, we want to really just check are you actually ready to find the details of how to evolve your organizational structure? Now, when I say, are you ready? Most people in most organizations we know are not actually ready to start exploring their organizational design because there are some fundamentally broken things going on with their agile transformation. And I use broken in a very strong sense. I mean, absolutely broken. Like there are things that are happening that are in conflict with agile itself. So what we're going to walk through to prepare you for this, to see if you're ready, is what we call the your agile transformation keys, or the 7 agile keys. If you want, you can just go download this now. It's available via our website. It's right at the bottom of our homepage. You can just go grab that now if you want. Or it's right there. But we're going to walk through each of these keys now one at a time to make sure, and this is your checklist, it's like the starting place before you even think about evolving your organizational design is, are you falling into any of the basic traps of agile? Now, if you are, it's okay. You're normal. We're going beyond agile as usual. We're giving you a fundamental rethink of agile based on our experience working with leaders around the world to create success with agile. So, number 1, agile is not the goal. So one of the biggest traps, and I was mentioning this earlier with having an agile transformation program, is that people start thinking that agile is the goal. The real goal is to help your organization be successful. And your organization probably already has goals. It's actually shift314.com/7 if you want to get that. I guess there's also an anchor keyword that'll also work. Thank you for posting that link. So it's really seeing an agile enabler. So when we think about it, a lot of agile transformation programs are confused and they start creating agile goals, agile metrics, how agile are we, and so on. Whereas the real goal of agile is to help the organization be successful, to serve its customers, deliver on its projects, to adapt to changing market conditions. So that's how to actually unlock the success with agile. That's secret number 1. All right, let's go into key number 2. Key number 2 is this. It's when you're thinking about approaching change in your organization to use an agile approach. The biggest challenge that people have with agile is they use a rollout plan, right? Even though agile says respond to change over following a plan, most rollout plans in organizations are fixed. They're just like, hey, this is what we're going to do, and the organization goes and does it. And any objections, any pivots, any changes to improve it are just ignored, right? Or there's only lip service paid to it. If you really are using an agile approach to adapting and introducing agile to your organization, you'll very naturally start to use what's called an evolution program, where the focus of it is everyone learning together through experiments and learning. So that's how you know you're in a healthy evolution program, is the focus is on learning and on shared discovery and going on this journey together, what we call an evolution program, right? So most transformations do not look like this, right? So if there isn't an openness for learning and growth, it's going to be very difficult to find an effective organizational structure, because in a rollout plan, you just copy and paste some previous solution that worked in some other context. And of course, it just doesn't work. So number 3, one of the third trap or key to creating success through agile is don't mandate agile. Like, do not make people try to enforce them and, kind of drag them along, kicking and screaming to say, hey, you have to do agile, and making them do it. What that does, it creates a lot of resentment, a lot of frustration, a lot of animosity, creates a lot of dissipation of energy, and it reduces the alignment in the organization. It creates a lot of resistance. So if you've seen any resistance, you've seen any frustration with what's going on with agile, it's because agile was probably mandated. Now, it turns out agile is about making people's lives better. So when we make people's lives better, we do that by inviting them to say, hey, is this the right time for you to start learning about agile? This is what it's about. Are you curious? Do you want to learn? Would you like to learn more? And we go where the interest is, right? So if you have 7 teams in a healthy organization, only one of them might want to start with Agile. You help that team, you help it be successful, and then other teams may want to go on the journey too. So that's what it means to iterate where the interest is. It's to really use a people-centric approach to change. And Agile is about people, after all. The fourth key is that you want to avoid big transformation programs. Big changes are scary. When people hear the word, we're going to go through a transformation, people go into fear. Their psychological safety levels falls, and their blood supply, their brain falls, and their ability to contribute and think goes down. Instead, what we'd like to do is make a change program that's safe for everyone, right? And the way to do that is, instead of having a big transformation program, is to instead improve daily work, right? So some of you, I think, made a comment about, oh, that sounds like Kanban. Well, it's not that we have to use Kanban as our process. We might use Scrum, but we might introduce it in an iterative and incremental way. That's a secret I've been using for over a decade now with all the teams I've worked with. It's to say, hey, here's this really cool approach to having teams work together. What feels like the right pieces to start implementing right now? What's the most you feel you can deal with and be effective at? So when we start improving daily work, we start making these iterative and incremental changes. We do a little bit every day, and eventually over time, we'll see a big result. Right? Now, sometimes you need to do a big change. And that's what we're going to talk about with organizational design, because often that's a bigger change. We'll talk about how to do that effectively and intelligently in a way that engages all the people. Right? And aside from that, the other main point of improving daily work is you get the quick wins. So you want to get quick wins in your environment. You're going to see results a lot faster by going after daily work. Transformation programs tend to take a long time and are very expensive, very difficult to get right, and it takes a lot of care and attention. That's why we're going to talk very carefully about how to approach organizational design. All right, so let's continue. What's next? All right, so not just doing Agile, include the Agile mindset. So probably the most important thing, okay, let me talk about the trap first. So the biggest trap that we see, again, worldwide with Agile transformations is that people are focused on the practices. Some people are surprised when we're talking about the Agile mindset. They've only been introduced to some Agile process, and no one's ever talked to them about what Agile is really about. Now, when we look at the Agile mindset, we could spend a whole talk just on that, but it's really about, as human beings, are we learning? Are we growing? Are we evolving? Are we putting people first in everything we do, or just some of the time? And how are we really at respond to change and evolving what we do? Right. So there's a lot actually to live the Agile mindset. What we've discovered, again, training thousands of leaders worldwide, even senior Agile coaches, a lot of people don't have the inner shift needed to truly collaborate. Our egos get in the way. We get really, really stuck. We don't know how to share power effectively. It's kind of like oftentimes we need to do some inner growth work to learn how to play nicely in the sandbox with others. So that's actually a huge one. I'm not going to go into details here. We've got whole trainings on this. The next trap is don't start with teams, right? Oftentimes we just start with Agile teams. We train up the teams. We give them the coaching support they need. And the teams are actually there's a lot of talented people who can do this out there. The biggest challenge, and this is what we see worldwide, is this challenge around managers. Managers getting left behind, either being told they no longer have a role, or they're being assigned to a new role that it requires a different kind of leadership, an Agile leadership approach, which they're not familiar with, and they don't have adequate training and support. Or more importantly, for managers who are holding power, and of course, Scrum Masters and product owners are the new managers in the Agile world, if you haven't noticed this phenomenon. All of these people, managers, Scrum Masters, product owners, need to know how to act in ways aligned with the Agile mindset. So need to have practices and skills aligned with an Agile way of working, as well as the mindset shift, the people-oriented shift, the shift towards collaboration, of respond to change, of adaptability. And most leaders right now are stuck getting training with business as usual, or they're invited to come to a Scrum training or a Lean training and think that's going to do the trick. What we've actually seen to unlock organization, to unlock all the success with the teams, is to support the leaders, to give them the training they need and the coaching they need to understand their new role and how to function. And when we get to that stage, It's not so much about agile anymore. It's actually more about how to function in a green or teal culture system, how to show up as a more evolved leader. So something very, again, very, very different than agile. Of course, it's compatible with agile because that's what agile is pointing to. Now, the final trap is this one: beyond tactics and strategy, to focus on the culture and the people. Everyone has heard of this Drucker quote of culture eats strategy for breakfast. And so what is this really about? It's about understanding that if we want to create high performance, of course we have to work on tactics. Of course we have to work on strategy. However, all of that sits on the foundation of culture. And that what we see at high performance organizations all over the world is they focus on culture first. They focus on their people first, and then evolve a strategy and a tactics along with the people together. So those are the 7 keys. I just want to share them briefly. There's a lot more details in the white paper. And so now that we have that context, if you're in that kind of context, we're ready to go to the next step. And this slide actually kind of captures the whole essence of everything we're talking about here, which is this: effective organizational design equals question mark. So what is our effective organizational design? And this also has the answer, because an effective organizational design is a question mark. It's a journey of discovery to find out what will serve this organization. And at best, you're going to have an experiment. There's no right answer. There's only learning together to come up with the best experiment possible. So how do we do that? How do we learn together, be agile, if we want to call it that? And how do we create the best outcome possible? So here we go. First of all, when we look at high performance organizations, whether we talk about green ones or teal ones, these high performance culture systems, I'll ask you this question: what color is a chameleon? Just type in the chat. What color is a chameleon? What color is a chameleon? Frank says any color. Yes. Many, depending on the environment. Yeah, so the answer to what is the right organizational design, this slide actually captures the right answer to what is the right organizational design. It's the one that fits your environment. That's the right that's the answer to the question mark. It's the one that fits your environment. And it's like trying on a pair of shoes. You might try on one pair and say, hey, this is not the right pair. Let me try on that pair. It's an emergent journey to discover an effective organizational design. It's not copy and paste. So now it's an emergent journey, and it's one that fits your environment. So because it's going to fit your environment, it depends on your environment. That's where it goes from. So you can't copy and paste the solution. Now, the next element that we'd like to talk about is that culture actually follows leadership, right? Instead of culture follows structure, we're advising something different, which is this: that what we're seeing here is a photo of a fractal. And a fractal is self-similar at every level of resolution. As you zoom in on a fractal, you'll see the exact same thing. Now, what this tells us is that if we want to have a certain culture at the bottom of the organization, the only way to get that is to have that culture at the top, because culture is a fractal. So to change the culture of a whole organization, it requires changing the leadership. Right? That's actually the key message here. So if you want to understand how to change culture, it actually starts with leadership. Now let's come back to the thing about what about structures? Well, can't you change the structures to create a shift in culture? Well, the answer is yes, and what you need to do to change the structures, though, is those leaders at the top need to have the mindset shift first, need to be evolved to a different way of being, thinking, understanding, interacting, to introduce a new structure in a way that'll support shifting the culture. So really, if we think about it, shifting culture, 90% leaders, 10% structure, right? So we're again overthrowing kind of agile dogma or standard industry creed of how do you shift the culture. Now, really, the reason everyone is focusing on structures right now to shift culture is because they don't know how to shift leaders, right? They don't understand what that journey is like. But we've written a lot on our website. We have trainings on this about exactly how to help leaders shift their mindset to show up in a more evolved way to create the culture shift. So, okay, so that's culture follows leadership, and structure, of course, also follows leadership. That's how to actually get effective changes in structures, is through changing the leadership. So it all comes back to leadership, whether you want to go through structures or not focus on structures, it all starts with the people. All right. Now, when we're looking at this diagram, what we're seeing here is this is what we need in order to create a good outcome, is people who are showing up and operating in a green or teal way of working, who are operating in ways that embrace complexity and allow emergence, or really are able to respond to change, right? That's what we're talking about, a culture of respond to change, a culture of collaboration, of what Agile is really all about. So when we really have an Agile culture or better, it unlocks the ability to create an effective organizational design. So the other, actually, can I talk about that? Okay. The other element to understand as we go into this, as leaders evolve their behavior, then they're able to create a supportive organizational environment and culture. And through that, we can introduce Agile and other new ways of working, which include changing our structures, our organizational design to unlock performance, which then lets us support business agility. So that's roughly the math. So of course, we're talking about how do we get business agility? Well, we have Agile, we have these new ways of working, we change our organizational design. Well, to do that, we need to have the right environment and the right culture, which then again depends on the leaders. So I'm going to talk to you about how leaders can engage in a very different way to lead in an Agile way or a more evolved way, the invitation of hacking the organizational design, because there's no longer a right answer. So all we can do is take what we have and hack it to something better. How do we do that? I'm going to give you the step by step for how I've done this very, very successfully in the past. Again, I've never shared this before, so you guys are the first one to get the story. So I'm excited to share this with you. All right. So number one, kind of obvious, but it often gets missed, is start where you are. What do you mean by start where you are? Well, looking at the truth of your organization, who are the people? What's the history of the organizational system? How has it evolved to get to this point? Like looking really at what's happening right now. Most organizations often ignore where they are and just say, oh, we'd like to be over there. And it's a huge trap. So it's about starting with, well, hey, what's going on now? How is it working? Where are the points of tension? Where are the challenges in the system? And what's working really well right now? And how well is this whole thing working anyway? So that's number one. Step number two, listen to the voice of the system, right? This is what I just started talking about, is like, well, getting everyone together and say, what's happening now? How is it working? Is our organizational design a problem right now? Is it working really well? Where are we on our journey towards having a great organizational design? Is this even an important topic to be exploring right now? That's the kind of things we want to do when we listen, and what's working, what's not. So we have a really good idea of what's actually happening. That really involves all the people that have something to say about the organizational system and how it's functioning. And most people are ready to contribute something. We as leaders simply have to ask them. All right. The third thing that's essential for creating an effective organizational design is a shared vision. It's a shared vision. Now, a lot of times what happens is that the leaders create a shared vision behind closed doors and they try to sell it to everyone. That's not what we're talking about here. We're talking about a compelling shared vision. Usually this is co-created with people in the organization that identify something that inspires and motivates people. If the vision doesn't inspire people, then it's not going to help you create a successful evolution, right? So then it's going back to square one. Well, why aren't people inspired by it? Why are they, not this again, right? That's how you know you're in transformation as usual, rather than in a sustainable evolution program. All right. The other thing is that this infographic is a picture of a map, of course, is to look for other routes. To look for, if you're trying to get to your destination of high performance, please, please, please look for any other possible route than changing your organizational design, your organizational structure. Now, why is that? Why would I say look for other routes? Well, because changing organizational design, it's a risky, complex undertaking. And when you make the change, you're running an experiment and things might actually get worse instead of getting better. Plus, there's the cost of making the change. So please find another route. I know the highway may look open. Oh, all we got to do is make this change. But if you've been through any kind of structural change in your organization, you know how difficult it is to make changes effective and stick and end up with excited, motivated people at the end of it, right? This is what we want. We want people who have fire in their belly and are excited about coming to work and really believe in management, that they're doing the right thing to make the organization better. So if you're trying to do a change to the organization that people aren't excited and motivated about and really believe will work, you're actually hurting your performance. Any executive can mandate a structural change. They have the power, they can do it. That doesn't mean it's going to help build performance. Most organizational structural changes actually reduce performance. All right, so here we go. So we're going to dive into the core of it now. This is the core. Well, now that you've met all the preconditions, you're not in the usual agile traps. There's a compelling shared vision. People have a shared aspiration for where they want to go. People are looking at the truth of what's happening now. You've listened to the system. The question is, well, now how do you actually run a design workshop? So we're going to go through the nitty-gritty details of exactly how I've done this in the past very successfully to create great organizational designs. Now, before we go on, I just want to clarify something. What I'm about to share with you will work in the right environment with the right context. When you have leaders who are ready to say, okay, great, we're ready to run an experiment. We're ready to try something different. We're ready to start sharing our power. So there's a lot of growth needed with the leadership to even begin to be in a place where this is possible. All right. So there's actually a technology we share called the paradox of power, where leaders need to learn how to share power effectively, and people in the organization need to learn how to receive it effectively. And once that's in place, and people are reasonably far along their learning journey, then this kind of solution can work, right? If you don't have all the preconditions, it still might work in your environment, depending on what the overall level of maturity is. But anyway, ready? 1, 2, 3. Let's dive in. Okay. So the first question is, how well is it working now? So if you did a 1 to 10 readout and you asked everyone in the organization, how well is our current organizational structure working right now? You want to know that information. Now, that's not just the only question you want to know. You say, well, how good would people like it to be, right? So if your current organizational design, let's say has an average around 6 out of 10, and people want it to be an 8 or 9 out of 10, then you're off to the races. You've kind of met these basic preconditions of, is there a big enough problem for you to address? Is there like a good enough opportunity to go after? The next one is to get the right people in the room, or in this case, the virtual Zoom rooms, right? Or Microsoft Teams, or whatever technology you're using. And what do we mean by the right people? What do we mean by the right people? Well, ideally, you want people from different levels of the organizational system. You want people from different departments, different groups, who have different perspectives and different ideas to contribute about what are the current challenges and how to resolve them. Now, if you're working with a group of, let's say, 80 or 100 people, you can just get a sampling of people, 20 or 30 people, to go work together to figure out how to solve this problem, to co-create a solution. If you've got a much bigger group, you're going to need to do some surveys to get some data to pull out what some of the challenges are, maybe do some pre-workshops. But ultimately, you want to have some sort of working group that's a manageable size, which, I historically have done lots of these at around 20 to 30 people. Once you get 20 to 30 people, there are enough perspectives, enough different bits of information that you're fairly likely to get a reasonable experiment, right? Nothing's guaranteed, but it's a good starting place. So once you have all the right people, you actually get them in a room. So once we're out of COVID, you'd actually get people in a big meeting room to say, with different tables, say, hey, we're here to solve this problem. Now, we want to talk about how do you set that group up for success. And what I want to share as a saying I learned in computer software development, which is part of my background, is garbage in, garbage out. So if you have a computer program and you put garbage data into it, you're going to get a garbage answer out of it. So same thing applies with self-organizing teams or trying to get people together and co-create something. Now, the challenge here is that if the team has all the skills, knowledge of organizational design needed, as well as knowledge of the organizational context, then you'll get a really great outcome. Now, my experience is most people haven't actually they know the organization really well. They know the current challenges really well, but they don't know the possibility, or they don't know what the options are, how to think about organizational design. So usually, and this is kind of like a super powerful cheat code here, it's to set people up for success. So give them a mini training to educate them on what are some principles of good organizational design. Not what are some things to copy and paste, because that really messes people up, but what are some principles to go by. So I'm going to share you some of the two key principles. If I had to pick the most important two, there might be other ones you want to add, but again, if you only have 15 minutes to really lock some concepts, you might be very choosy about how much you focus on upskilling people's capabilities. So I'll share you the two most important ones that I share. Number one is that the organizational structure is all about the value stream. It's about the flow of value from concept to something that works for the customer, that generates revenue for the company. So when everyone's focused on saying, hey, wait a second, does our current organizational structure support the flow of value? Oh, where do we get in our own way? How could we be structured differently to flow value better? Who would need to be working with who? Where are the connections? How do people need to actually function? Where's the intensive collaboration happening, right? So that's what we ask when where's the flow of value? Now, if you're working in an agile environment, the questions you ask are like, well, what's in the shared backlog for all these groups? What are the major projects coming down the pipe? How do we want to adapt? And some organizations do this on a yearly or more frequent basis to adapt their structure to the emerging needs of the business and so on, or the customer needs. It's say what's coming down the pipeline, what's ahead of us in the next, whatever the time frame in the backlog is. Sometimes it's only 6 months. Sometimes it's a 3-year thing of like, oh, here's the major plan of work that we want to undertake for this group. And looking at the future and going, oh, well, given this future and this sequence of major projects coming our way, how do we want to organize ourselves to support the flow of that value? All right, so it's a very important thing. So people know what the flow of value is. It's also a really good idea to make sure everyone's on the same page what the current organizational structure is. Because some people may kind of know it tacitly, but just being really clear and saying, hey, this is our existing teams, this is how things work, this is who collaborates with who, this is where the problem spots are, so everyone's on the same page of some of the challenges. All right. The other thing that I find essential to share is again, we're going meta to agile. We're just talking about, well, if you have a team, whether it's a waterfall team, agile team, don't care. What are the important things about a team, right? So in a team, there's a boundary on the team. The team's responsible for getting the work done. They've got a shared goal or purpose. They have to work together to create a shared result. And that there are people who are outside the team, and everyone knows where that is. There's a clear boundary. And, best team size is 5, or Luke Holman's rule, more than 8, no collaborate, right? So this understanding that when we put people together on these teams, we can create highly effective units of work. But then again, it can make challenges for them to communicate and collaborate with other groups. So we want to be very careful about where we put team boundaries, how do we do team boundaries? And Agile's got a very good answer for this, which is, well, get all the people together who need to work together. The developers, the testers, the business people, and so on, user experience people, so that they can build, mostly independently, a lot of really great work. So once people understand those dependencies, then they know things like, well, we want to focus on value. We want to get people working together in teams, but we don't have the teams be too big because that won't work either. And so once people understand these basic principles, then we can ask them to co-create. Then we can ask them to find a solution. So how do we actually set them on that journey? And I'm going to share, this is actually my website. There's a URL at the bottom. What this is a technology that I learned from Goiko Agic. And I had the privilege one time of spending a whole day learning about specification by example. It was actually at an earlier Toronto Agile conference, I think maybe like 8 years ago or something. Actually, the date will be here. Where's the date? Date is 2013. Okay, so 7 years ago. It's close. All right. So basically, this diagram, I don't have this written up for organizational design, but I can tell you what the key secrets are. Number one, you start in a large group creating coherence, giving people an orientation of this is the problem, this is the challenge, this is the goal. We want to come up with a better design if we can during the session, and clarify a lot of the assumptions. Then what we want to do is break people into groups, into small groups, so there can be a lot of discussion, a lot of creation, a lot of exploration of ideas. And originally, and this is kind of tying in some of the knowledge of game storming here, is we want to have divergent ideas at the beginning, right? And so oftentimes we put people who have very similar views together at tables, and we have them brainstorm, well, what are all the challenges with our current organizational system? They can put it all up and they can share back with other groups to create. So this is what we do. We have small group brainstorms, then they share with a large group, and then we go back into small groups. So we keep on bouncing back between small group for discussion, exploration, and alignment, and then large group for keeping the whole group in sync. So the kind of things we want to go to small group for are, well, how are things working now? What are the biggest challenges? We do that unless we'd already done that prior to the session prep. And then we can go on to say, well, what do you guys think the solution should like? Great. And if you get people who are very similar in mindset, they'll be say, yes, we got the solution for sure. Now, this is where you can really mess them up, is then you mix up the groups, you mix up the table groups. So now they're sitting with people who have diverse perspectives. And then you ask them to come up with a solution. And what you'll find out is they'll say, wait a second, I thought we had the answer, but now there's a whole bunch of other information I'm learning now. That answer won't work anymore. And what they'll discover is the assumptions this is really important, the assumptions they walked in the room with about what would be a good solution get blown to little bits and pieces. And then you make it, the other fun part is you make it competitive. You say, well, look, we're going to have all the table groups, see which group can come up with the best proposal. And you put a time box on it, 15 minutes, 20 minutes. If they're panicking, give them a bit more time. And then you do a report back and you say, hey guys, it's okay. Not every group you make it safe for people. Not every group needs to come up with a great solution. We're here trying to win together. So collectively, as long as we collectively find a good option, we'll be winning together. So there's no pressure on any team to come up with a good solution on your own. And you might have an idea that some other team can run with to make something even better. So all the teams do a report back to the large groups, or back to large group again. All the teams do a report back in large group. Everyone's listening to everyone else. And now we say, now you can steal other people's ideas. Take whatever ideas you heard from the other teams that you thought would work really well. And now you get to revise your solution proposal. And we get them to pitch their new solutions back again after another 15 or 20 minutes. And then we have all these different groups proposing answers, and we can use any technology you want. I've always liked applausometer or humometer, where people go, depending on how much they like the solution. Lots of fun things you can do with groups. If you're online, you might do something polling oriented to see which solution people like best or what they like about it, or scoring each solution. And what you'll get at the end of it is you'll get a solution that most people like. And then you say, great, most people like solution A. What other information from solutions B, C, D, E, whatever, do people want to add to this? What proposals are there? And then as a large group, again, we're going back to large group, you can have those things added. And at the end of it, you know what? You're not going to have a perfect outcome, but you're going to have a good enough outcome that the whole room understands why that organizational design is a good one and how it's going to work, because they've already been talking through about overcoming all the challenges. And a lot of potential problems have already been worked out, and they've already made countermeasures to get it to work. Now, of course, you're not done. At this point, you say, hey, this is what we're publishing to the rest of the organization. Our work group, we came up with these solutions. This is what we're doing. We're proposing. This is why we think it's good. And you know, we say, hey, everyone, did we get it right? Please score our solution. How good is our solution from 1 to 10? And what we're looking for here is, are we getting a yes? Right? It's not saying, oh yeah, we did the best we could, we're going to go with this. No. It's now looking at the larger, broader community to say, hey, did we get this right? Is this a good enough experiment to try now? Or do we have to go back to the drawing board? What do we miss? And either way, you're a winner. Either you've got a good solution, or everyone's going to tell you why the solution sucks and all the different things wrong with it, and even suggest ideas of how to make it better. And then you just get the people together and go back to the drawing board and integrate the feedback and come up with a new solution and give that through the approval process. All right. But you see what I'm talking about here? I'm talking about the people who are impacted by the work making decisions about what the new structures look like. And I'm also talking about everybody, even people who are not in the workshop, everyone having a voice in saying, how good a solution is this? And will it help us be successful here? Will it help us move towards high performance? Will it help us to be successful? because everyone in your organization wants to be successful. When we as leaders, because we're managers in the organization, we're leaders of change, this is our chance to model an agile way of working, a more evolved way of working. And through this, we can build so much trust, so much safety, so much goodwill in the organization that anything we come up with has a very, very high chance of succeeding. And we've done this. We've modeled an evolved culture system. We've modeled evolved leadership. And we've modeled an evolved way to approach organizational evolution. What I'm describing you is a fantastic technology to create extraordinary change. All right. Everything we're speaking about here is about rethinking Agile. If you're doing Agile in the usual way, you're going to get the usual Agile results, which typically aren't that great. So we're asking you to join us in our fundamental rethink of Agile, which is to understand that Agile itself is a shift in culture. And that to actually be successful, introduce the Agile mindset, we as leaders need to embody that and have skills that allow us to function in a more evolved way. So I invite you to stay connected. You're welcome to connect with me on LinkedIn. There's a free download of my ebook about how Agile is a culture system. What else is there? Yeah, it's hard for me because my slides are backwards when I see it on the monitor. So we have lots of blog posts on this topic. We do extensive leadership training and advisory consulting to organizations to help them be successful with a much more evolved approach to Agile. And now I'm going to take questions. So I don't think you can go live here and ask questions, but you can certainly ask questions through the chat. All right, so go ahead.
You can come on stage actually. So
they come on screen. Yeah, please come on screen.
Yeah, so they can actually come. So there, guys, there is a button at the right top of the screen which says audio and video. If you have a question for Mike, so yeah, I can see Laurie is requesting. So I'll promote her to the stage. Ramesh is also requesting. Let's see who shows up.
Thank you, Tushar. It's great. I love having help here. This is awesome.
Ramesh, do you have a question? You are on the stage right now. Do you have a question for Mike? I think he might be.
Okay, or if you want to type in via chat, you're welcome to do that as well. So I see a question: how close are we to the post-agile world? I would say we're very far. What I see going on again, we do a lot of work worldwide. We see a lot of major consulting companies doing Agile in a very traditional approach, often with a cut and paste solution, because it requires cheaper resources. They can make better profit margins, and a lot of them don't actually know any better. And they themselves would need to evolve their mindset and shift to a more evolved state of functioning to be able to operate this way. And I don't want to just please think I'm singling out major consulting companies. A lot of people who have been Agile coaches for 10 years also approach change in a very, very traditional way. And what we're speaking about here is a very different approach to understanding change.
You're good. You're good to speak. I think is she waiting for us? Laurie, you can ask your question. Mike, do you hear me?
I can hear you, yes. Laurie, you can speak now. I'm not sure if you can. Oh yeah, and just to answer the question, I know someone was wondering, am I in Canada? Yeah, I'm in Toronto. It's just this tree behind me is still not, the leaves are still on it, but I'm in North York, so if anyone was wondering. All right. So I see a question from Scott. So Scott says, how long does it take? I think that's the question for these transformations. Yeah, so that's a really, really great question. So I think I shared in the Agile Keys the 2 secrets for a successful Agile transformation. One is to drop the word Agile. The other one is to drop the word transformation. So every successful Agile transformation I've seen may have started out as an Agile transformation, but it soon evolved into an evolutionary journey about increasing the organization's capabilities, evolutionary capabilities, and their performance, right? Using Agile as a means to that end. So the answer is, in some ways, how do you create a successful Agile transformation? It's impossible, because you're doomed, because you're trying to focus on Agile, which is not the goal, and you're using the word transformation, which scares the willies out of people and puts them into fear and defense and resistance. So it's pretty much impossible to have a successful Agile transformation program unless it's done in a very evolved approach that moves beyond the word Agile and beyond the word transformation. And this is what I think Scott Ambler was talking about in the keynote this morning, is that we need to approach things in a very, very different way, with humility, with compassion, engaging people where they are. That's essentially the same message that I'm repeating here, with the very practical step-by-step mechanics of what does that look like on the ground floor when you're in an Agile transformation. So the other question is, how long does it take? I've seen extraordinary results of shifting leadership and shifting culture in 3 months, like really, really dramatic shifts. Now, here's the deal. Once the shift has happened with leadership, because there's so much debt, there's so much listening debt, relationship debt, it takes time to heal out of it. It takes time to rebuild the trust, rebuild people's levels of psychological safety, rebuild their faith in leadership. So even though the hard work that I've seen leaders do is very, very, a lot can happen in 3 months, and you can start to see some very tangible results after that. What we do is we actually set people for an ongoing journey towards evolution. And we've got data we can share where over a period of years, we can see through things like Net Promoter Score, how organizations have evolved and created a more capable work environment by actually measuring the organizational performance through this engagement proxy of Gallup 12 questions. So yeah, you can see results after 3 months with this kind of approach. Is very, very rapid. In fact, I'll stop there. Great question. Thank you. Okay, I'm trying to read this question. I know, Tushar, can you just read the questions? That might help me. It's a bit hard to see.
So, Laurie was able to finally log her question. I love the approach and have applied very similar approaches. Is there some advice you can give about how to break down the barriers when people are at the executive levels, feel extreme ownership and control over their areas?
So how do we have them not have extreme control? Well, yes, it's actually really good. So I think that's actually a really great sign that executives have a strong sense of ownership and really want to make things successful. That's fantastic. You want to have really passionate, engaged executives. That's fabulous. Now, the challenge is that and this is what we see again with leaders that we train worldwide, is that leaders need to learn how to start sharing their power, right? How to start giving away power safely, iteratively, and incrementally. And they also need to learn how to help develop people to receive that power. Now, Agile is a disaster as far as we can tell, because what happens is you say, well, from this level of sharing of power, where there's very little sharing, let's share all the power. Let's have autonomous teams. And teams find out, we're not really autonomous. And, leaders see things going wrong and they're told just to leave the team alone, or you're micromanaging. So what we see is that the kind of the naive approach to Agile of just jumping right into autonomous self-organizing teams. And we've got videos on this, we've got blogs on this that describe a more evolved approach. But this is actually like a very low maturity starting point. So a lot of executives don't feel like Agile is a very good solution because they're actually right. Giving away all that power to people who are not ready to take on that power is actually ineffective. It's actually a block for creating high performance. And again, I don't care about Agile. I don't care about Scrum. I don't care about Kanban. I care about helping people in organizations be successful. If I could just use Scrum and have that work, I'd use that. If I could just use Kanban and have that work, I'd use that. But what I've discovered is that we need to meet people where they are and give, especially leaders, the support they need to help invite them to own the journey of evolution. Like, something you may not know is that transformation programs are not delegatable. You cannot delegate a transformation program to HR or to an agile transformation team. It simply doesn't work, because the managers are the ones holding the power. They need to learn how to share that power effectively. Just trying to give it away naively doesn't work. It just creates a lot of tensions and creates a kind of a big setup for failure and traps in the future.
Laurie is agreeing. She's saying very true and applauding you. So
great, thanks for the applause. That was helpful, I guess. So many people already be on this page. Great. Other questions? I'd like to have someone come on live if you can figure out how to do that. I think you can just ask.
Exactly, you can just ask. Yeah, Shireen is requesting it. Let's see.
I'll take the plunge. You can hear me?
Oh, great. Yay. Thank you.
I think I don't want to speak for everybody, but I'm sure we've all had the experience where we're invited by the leadership to help the teams, right? They don't see themselves as wanting to be part of that. How do you overcome that? That really, it's the people who are asking who need the help. How do you invite yourself over?
Yeah, well, that's a fantastic question. Well, the truth is, most of us are told we need to go help these teams. We're ordered to. We're not invited to. First of all, that's usually the situation. Yeah. So yeah, I generally use like just raw, plain honesty, and it works really, really well, because people find it so refreshing in most corporate environments. It's like, hey, guess what? I've been assigned to go work with your team and help make you guys better. And guess what? I'm not your boss. You don't report to me. I can't make you do anything. And they're like, oh yeah, you're not our boss. You can't make us do anything. And I go, that's right. Now, I do know a lot of things. And if you guys want to function better, I can help you. Like, I just want to check. Can I just check in with you guys? How well are things working right now for your team? Like, how good are things running? Are things working amazingly for you right now? Or where are you? And I ask like a readout from 1 to 10, right? And I get a sense. Okay, well, great. You're great. Thank you so much for sharing. You guys are at a 7. How good a team do you want to be? How well do you want to function as a team? And they go, oh, we want to be a 9. And then it's like, fantastic. Would you guys like some help? And they go, yeah, we'd like some help. But it starts out by telling them I'm not there to make them do anything. And if some teams will go, yeah, we don't actually want to respond to the survey. We're not interested. We're just out. And I go, okay, that's no problem. I can't make you do anything with me because you don't report to me. No problem, right? And I go on the next team. And so the whole secret, there's a lot more to say about this. Actually, there's a new book that's written, might be edited a bit, but coming out mid next year, where we go through exactly how to approach things, how to start with the people who want. But the secret is just iterate where the interest is. If you've got 5 teams, start with the one team that's excited. Help them be amazing. Yep. And then the other teams will get jealous.
It's been my experience too, but it's always hard to tell the person who's paying the bills that they're a hindrance.
Well, yeah, so I totally understand. And again, that's where oftentimes to build culture bubbles, especially with people who are not as evolved, we need to build adapters. So just say, yeah, I'm absolutely going to help all the teams. I'm just starting over here, right? So you say, yes, I'm totally aligned with your mission, and I'm starting over here because I'm going to be more effective over here because they want the help right now. The other teams aren't ready yet, right?
Awesome.
And again, that might come back to you to say, well, look, you guys say you don't want help. Like, why is that? What's going on for you? Why is there no interest or desire? And they might be under some crushing project burden. Then you can go back and say, well, look, I talked to these teams, but they're so overloaded. They have no time for help or learning. And they'll be like, oh, okay, whoops. Okay, well, maybe we can do something about that. And so even if you get a no, you can say, well, why is it no? And really help the team get unblocked. Yeah.
Thank you so much.
Hope that helps.
Yes.
You're welcome. Great.
Question from Ray, like how would an organization know or measure they have achieved high performance?
That's a really, really great question. Probably, I'd recommend. I mean, so we've actually partnered with Comparative Agility. We have something called a performance index. If you Google Shift 314 performance index, you'll go find it. It's also linked. I believe it's linked on our website. You can also just message me either directly. You have my email or via LinkedIn, and I'll help you find it. But that's what we actually recommend because it gives kind of a broad spectrum of what's going on, of actually what is going on with performance from 5 different dimensions. Another really great one is to use the Gallup 12 survey questions. I've used those for many, many years very successfully. If you use Google Gallup 12, those will pop up. So either of those, the comparative agility tool is free to get started with. So we encourage you to use that if that feels like the right thing for you.
Mike. Michael, there is one more question from Shai. Could you please share a reference to the comment with regards to taking a more evolved approach rather than jumping ahead first into the self-organizing team structures?
Okay, yeah. So actually on our website, under resources, I actually have a whole talk, 1 hour talk recorded on beyond self-organizing teams. It turns out autonomous self-organizing teams is a huge trap. And if you're doing it right now, it's harming your performance. And I explain step by step in detail why that is. So again, I'm not a heretic. I'm just interested in helping organizations be successful. And it turns out there's a lot better choice of words, which is interrelated responsible teams. It actually turns out to unlock success because it's actually starting people where they are on their journey. And this has to do with where people from theory X to theory Y, how evolved are they, and so on. So that's the super short answer is about how do we help people support their learning and growth in an effective way. So if you want to learn more, go check it out. And again, if you have any questions, happy to connect through social media.
George has a general question like, will the recording be made available? It would be. And we are right at the talk also, Michael.
Yeah, so George, I can answer this question. As one of the organizers, we haven't figured out the logistics. It should be the Toronto Agile Community website. There should be a link there. All right. And I think we're over time now.
Yes.
We're supposed to, yeah. So looking forward to seeing everyone at the closing keynote. Should be a great experience. All right. See everyone there. Thank you so much for your time and attention, everyone. And hope you have an amazing rest of the conference.
Thank you, everyone. Thank you, Michael.